Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, rights groups and the Law Association demands an explanation as Zambia completely shuts down its court system. It says it was a security precaution. Skeptics point out that the convenient timing coincides with the last day the opposition could file a legal challenge against election results that recently returned President Hichilema for a second mandate. We break down the implications. Also, in Guinea, rescuers are still scrambling to unearth the remains of those lost to a deadly landfill collapse. Dozens were killed in Dar es Salaam in Conakry when torrential rains triggered the disaster over the weekend. And Nigeria wishes Ogogo on his way. The veteran star of the Nollywood screen is buried before heartbroken crowds in his hometown after passing away from cancer at 66. Now, Zambia says that it shut down its entire court system on Monday because of security concerns. But rights groups accuse authorities of trying to stop anyone from challenging the results of this month's presidential election. Now, that returned President Hakainde Hichilema for a second term. But opposition leader Brian Mundubile, who was the runner-up, had planned on lodging an objection to the results. Monday was the last day to file those court challenges, but staff were told to stay home and police were seen on site at the Supreme Court in Lusaka. Now, the country's law association says the timing of the judicial shutdown is very problematic. I'm joined now by Lo Nell, who is a political analyst in Southern Africa. Lo, thanks very much for joining us to share some of your insight. Now, given the circumstances, do you think that the official results given for Monday's court closure hold up?
No, I don't think so at all. And we have to be honest that they haven't really given us a reason. It says very simply for security reasons, and no more information was provided. And in some ways, it reminds a little bit of the reasons that were offered last Friday, August 14th, when the counting was suspended for several hours. We were again told that there were security reasons for this rather extraordinary intervention. We were told there were attacks on polling stations or polling staff. But there was no subsequent communication, no explanation, no further details on what exactly had transpired. And all of this really just feeds into the distrust that this is creating. And it's making Zambia look a little bit ridiculous, to be honest.
All of this murkiness is quite unusual for Zambia. I mean, considering it's up to now pretty solid democratic reputations. This has been a messy election. On top of the court shutdown on Monday, we saw the raid on opposition candidate Mundubile's house just after the vote, in which former Minister Mutotwe Kafwaya, we learned later, was killed. So what's your take on what the fallout from all of this has been for Hichilema, and where do you think it's coming from?
Well, I think you're quite right in pointing out that Zambia's got a proud democratic history. It's gone through several peaceful transitions of power. And we also came into this election very much with the expectation that Hichilema would earn a re-election. And so in many ways, if you look at the official election results, they pretty much bear out what we had anticipated. We expected Hichilema to win. He won by maybe a percentage point more than he got in 2021. And we also expected the UNPD DMP to do well. And achieve a parliamentary majority, and that's exactly what it did. But at the same time, the election has now been tarnished by these incidents, these still to be explained things that have happened. The raid on Mr. Mundubile's home, events today, the suspension of the counting. But it should probably be also said that there were signs that this might be a troubled election in the run-up to the elections. At the end of last year, of course, when the constitutional amendments were adopted in Parliament, these were very controversial constitutional amendments. Very much they looked like they were designed to give the UNPD this majority that it wanted. We also saw there were some obstacles put in the way of opposition leaders, and Mr. Mundubile was actually only able to register his political party and contest the parliamentary elections because he made use of an already registered political party, the NRPUP, which really no one had heard of prior to that, as his political vehicle. So they came into the election with some question marks, and then these incidents, these developments have really only cast an even longer shadow over the outcome.
Is all of this likely, from the outside, to affect Zambia's international standing, either when it comes to outside investors or where it stands within the landscape of regional diplomacy?
Well, so far we've seen election observers have given the election the thumbs up. It's worth pointing out that Hichilema's winning margin on the final analysis was more than 1 million votes, 1.1 million votes. We've seen alternative tallies, including from the Christian Churches Monitor Group, produce results that show his return to be slightly lower than that, Mundibila slightly higher than that, but still shows that he would have won, even if the numbers were adjusted the way that they would suggest they needed to be. So it's an imperfect election, but I think everyone expected Hichilema to win, and everyone is probably satisfied that he has legitimately been re-elected. But it doesn't do him a lot of good domestically. He does enter this last term with a bit of a legitimacy deficit. International observers, international investors would be happy with what they've seen because they were hoping for continuity. They were hoping that he would get another 5 years and push on with his reform agenda, and they'll probably overlook some of these problems with the elections in favor of this continuity.
Thank you so much. Lo Nell, political analyst, there helping us unpick some of the developments on the Zambian political landscape. Now, in Guinea, rescuers are still trying to unearth victims of a deadly landfill collapse. At least 31 were killed in the neighbourhood of Dar es Salaam in Conakry when torrential rain triggered the disaster and destroyed homes in which many were living.
In the heart of Guinea's capital, Conakry, a vast garbage dump stretches as far as the eye can see. This is the Dar es Salaam landfill. Early Sunday morning, heavy rains soaked its towering mounds of trash, turning them into a deadly trap for those living in shacks and tents below. After a first landslide around 2 a.m., residents came to search for victims when a second wave buried them as well.
When the young people went to go look, there was a second landslide. All the people who went there to help ended up being buried themselves.
The government says 30 people were killed. Officials say they're doing everything they can to find survivors and bodies.
Civil protection and our other services, with the support of the government, found many people under the rubble. First, bringing out 22 people who are injured, some seriously and others slightly.
Conakry's largest landfill had been slated for closure on Sunday amid growing safety concerns, particularly during the country's rainy season. Those living in improvised housing at the foot of the open-air dump had been ordered to move, but many remained. Despite serious health risks, many eke out a living by scavenging among the waste. Guinea has the world's largest reserves of bauxite, crucial for making aluminum, but most of the profits go to foreign mining companies. According to the World Bank, more than 43% of Guineans live below the national poverty line.
Now, in Nigeria, there are fears that about 600 people have been kidnapped by an armed group that attacked a mosque in Niger State in the north. Now, a video appearing to show the abductees sitting in a forest surrounded by men with guns has been posted online. Other residents from Dekara village, from where the captives were seized, have said that they recognise and can confirm the identities of some of those seen in the videos. Authorities suspect criminal gangs trying to extort a ransom as being behind the attack. And in eastern DR Congo, Rwanda-backed M23 rebels are still in control of swathes of territory. After months of stalled peace talks, though, both sides have agreed to get the ball rolling again. Emmett Livingston in Kinshasa gets us up to speed.
It's the first serious development in the peace process between the Democratic Republic of Congo and the M23 rebels in many months. On Monday, UN ceasefire monitors arrived in the town of Minembwe in the province of South Kivu in eastern Congo, an area which has seen fighting in recent weeks. This arrival of the ceasefire monitoring team comes after both sides agreed to establish a new roadmap for peace during talks in Switzerland last week. Kinshasa and the rebels originally signed an agreement back in November in Qatar. While this fell short of a true peace deal, both sides agreed to work towards a ceasefire. They were also meant to engage on other issues, such as the release of prisoners. But until very recently, almost no progress had been made in implementing this agreement. This latest development will spark hope of an eventual resolution to the M23 conflict in eastern Congo, which first began in late 2021. But many observers are also sceptical. Fighting continues on the ground, and the conflict has seen several mediation attempts end in failure.
And finally, Nigeria's film industry and its fans say goodbye on Monday to a veteran of their illustrious screens. Taiwo Hassan, known affectionately as Ogogo, was laid to rest after losing his battle with cancer at 66. He was buried in his hometown in Ogun State after a lifetime in which he left a profound mark on Nigerian and Yoruba cinema. Over the course of his career, he won several awards and critical praise for his kingly portrayal of the Alafin of Oyo in the movie Anikulapo. He began acting in 1981 and became one of his industry's most recognizable faces. Well, that's it for Eye on Africa for now. Thanks very much for joining us, though, and do so again if you can. Till then, take care.